So hello everyone, welcome to this week's YouTube video, tutorial, thought piece, whatever you want to call it. And why am I going to do that? What am I going to talk about this week? Well, first and foremost, I want to talk about why S1000D is getting such a bad press in some organizations. Okay, and we're going to look at some of the causes, the causation of this, and the purpose or the reason, the genesis for me doing this presentation is because I'm supporting two projects right now. One of them has inherited an S1000D requirement. They're questioning some of the decisions that have been made. They're questioning some of the estimates they've been given, etc. And one is coming to S1000D brand new. They're not quite sure where to start. And they're questioning the value and what S1000D is going to give. So in this presentation where I'm looking at why does S1000D get a bad press in many organizations, we're going to cover that. We're going to cover that off, and hopefully you'll find this a little bit interesting. So problem number one is organizations simply don't understand the why of S1000D. And, I've got a schematic that looks at the problems that S1000D is solving. And I gave a training course this year, I can't remember when it was, where I trained a bunch of technical authors, and we contextualized where the technical author sits in the ecosystem of integrated product support and wider S1000D projects. And the overwhelming feedback was they had no idea the role that they played in such a big integrated product support kind of cog, if you like, or a wheel, or a machine. A machine's a better word. So we're going to come and we're going to the problem number one is essentially that they don't understand the problem that they're solving, and that's just an educational issue, right? So when I start any of my training consultancies, I've said this before, I ask, why are you here? Okay, and that is, there's a few reasons why I ask that question, but for the purposes of today, the reason I ask that question is to kind of understand the motivations of the people that are in the room, and to understand why and what they think they're getting from the training course. So here's some of the answers that I invariably get. So I was told to be here, and that's maybe somebody deeper in the weeds that has been told by some kind of management team or some kind of business improvement team that they need to go to an S1000D training course. And invariably people are told no idea. I've just been told that this is something that we're going to have to think about, we're going to have to consider, and maybe we do need to look at S1000D. It's a contractual requirement is another reason why the organizations that I'm supporting are saying that they're coming. So everyone is doing it is another one. Our customer has asked for it. Now, what's the problem with all of these answers? It's not actually telling me what their problem is in terms of a technical problem. It's saying that's their motivation, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail as we move through this training course here. Problem number two is that there's a lack of purpose of what we're doing, not just because it's S1000D, but because a lack of purpose around what we're doing with technical documentation. So if we start looking at some of this in a little bit more detail here. So if we look at a typical S1000D implementation, and I know that there are, I've already mentioned it here, that there are some that are starting new projects, there are some that are inheriting projects, some that are doing upgrades to projects and those kind of things. So anyway, for the purposes of today, we're going to talk about that there is a reactive approach to S1000D, and there's often a proactive approach to S1000D. Now, in my mind, reactive is often coming from a negative position, a negative standpoint. Our customer wants it. Our customer's told us we have to do it. It's in the contract, which is very short-sighted, very reactive. As I've just said, it's reactive. So on the proactive side, of course, we have we're being a little bit more calm about this. We're being a little bit more zen about how we're going to implement our technical documentation brackets S1000D project and how we're going to do that. So the problem, of course, is that from a reactive and a proactive, this gives us on the reactive side, we're often up against time pressures, we're often up against budget pressures, resourcing pressures, those kind of things, which often means that we make short-term plaster kind of decisions. We're putting a plaster over a cut. It's still bleeding, but the plaster we hope is going to get us over the gate. Where on the proactive side, we have a little bit more time, we have a little bit more resource, we have a little bit more time to analyze what's going on, why we're doing things in a certain way. Now, the problem with both of these methodologies is the risk management. So the risk management for the reactive project, we can introduce risk because we're making short-term decisions. We're making decisions that may ultimately cost us more in the long run. We might be buying the incorrect software. We might be getting the incorrect advice. We might not necessarily fully understand what we're being asked to do, and we're thinking short-term. Where on the other side, of course, is we're thinking more long-term. We can reduce risk. We can be a little bit more cognizant about how we're going to do things, how we can make the right decisions around software tools, how we can consider our IT environment, our eco-structure, our environments around technical publications and S1000Ds in a more of a strategic sense. So obviously what we want to do ultimately is we want to be able to get from a more reactive to a more proactive when it comes for an S1000D project. And this is where the value is if we take our time and we understand the problems that we're solving, and then we're going to talk about here very shortly the why we need a vision, why we need strategy, and we need to understand the problems that we're solving. Because if we don't have that, then we ultimately going to have a huge load of things that we have to untangle. So if we look at reactive versus proactive, you can a reactive position is coming very much from a position of often, not always, often coming from a position of ambiguity, and is also coming from a position of constraints. Where a more proactive, we're coming from a more insight and freedom based to be able to make choices and decisions about what we're doing. And you can pause the video here and you can read all of the stuff that I've put underneath here. But what we're saying is that the ones that I really want to look at here are things like a clear vision and goals of what we're trying to achieve, and we have a supportive culture, and we have a long-term vision of what it is that we are wanting to achieve. So for me, the differences here are, one that's coming from a position of stability, and maybe one that's coming from more of a position of instability, short-term decisions, rapid decisions. Let's just put a plaster over the cut and hope that we get it done in a way that we can satisfy the customer, we can satisfy the contract, and those kind of things. So when I talk about these things here, I'm talking about the no vision, the no strategy, no plan introduces a whole load of risks for us. So we have to have corporate buy-in into what we're doing in our S1000D environment. I'm not going to get into just revenue chasers or something along those lines, but you can pause the slide here. You can see some of the things that we need to be considering as part of a vision, as part of a strategy. And so when I am talking to my customers that are having this kind of soul searching discussion around, are we getting any benefit or value from using something like S1000D? These are the questions I ask. So what's your vision and your purpose for your technical documentation? How do we then achieve that vision and that strategy, and that then we can start looking at, is S1000D appropriate? If it's not, because the next couple of slides I'll tell you why the customer's perspective is often very different to the supply chain. So if we're coming at this from a position of Zen, and we're coming at this from a position of, we have a vision, we have a strategy, and we know exactly what we're going to do with our technical publications, and we've decided and we've analysed and we've thought through using something like S1000D. We're coming at this from a purpose-driven way. We have a why, and therefore we can all buy into this, because we have the vision, the what, and it's actually telling us a declaration of where we want to be with our technical publications. And we can then work backwards and decide that S1000D is the most appropriate road for us to follow, and that comes into the how, the strategy of what we want to achieve. So our goals, our actions, our resources and roadmaps. So that comes back to that first slide I showed you, coming from a position of corporate buy-in, corporate backing, ample resources. And of course, I'm living in a blue cloud thinking world, blue sky thinking world here right now. But we need to think about this in a more strategic and purpose-driven way. If you're coming at it from a reactive position, I understand why many projects have to do that. Okay, and I'm going to come on again to that here very shortly. So what we're trying to do is we want to get from more of a reactive to a proactive. And, that comes from a purpose with a vision and a strategy of our support information and how we're going to deploy that. And then ultimately, we're going to have stakeholder buy-in. Now, one of the questions I get asked all the time is, okay, Mike, this is all great, but how do we, develop a tech doc strategy? How do we develop an S1000D strategy? I've got you covered. I'm going to be, so make sure you like, share, subscribe, because over the next couple of months, I'm going to be releasing some online training dates where we're going to talk about strategy for our support information and where it sits in the world of product support, integrated product support. And then we're going to talk about how we can drive that strategy from a vision, and how do we create a vision statement, those kind of things. So if you're interested in that, make sure you like, share, subscribe. I shall be announcing on our S1000D.training website shortly that workshop. So you can head on over there and you'll get notified when it comes. Problem number 3, okay, is quite clearly the customer expectation is very different to the supply chain and what the supply chain is trying to achieve. Now, I've done some stuff on LinkedIn on this in the past, and I've done some stuff on here in the past as well on why there's two different perspectives of the world, and they're solving two different problems. The customer's problems are different to the supply chain, and so we have to make sure that our customer is aware of those challenges and those problems, but they also have to be told what the upside is. And, which is why a lot of the questions that I'm getting at the moment is, why are we having to spend this much money when we normally spend only this much money? And so let's look at that a little bit here. So here is a basic chart where we're going to talk about inertia, we're going to talk about effort, the level of effort, and we're going to talk about time, and what time is on a project. And you can tell that these have come from from one of my IPS training courses, because we're talking about some of the life cycles here, or the phases of a life cycle, if you like. So we have this kind of inertia on an S1000D project. And again, I'm being very generic here. I'm kind of just saying, this is a typical S1000D implementation. We have this, and what's going on inside that curve, we can talk about another time. But we have a delineation. We have a delineation between what the supply chain needs and what the supply chain wants, and what the customer expectations are. And we also look at something along the lines of cost, which is one of the key decision factors here. The cost exposure in the supply chain is vastly different to what the customer expectations are. So the customer expectations, because they may be coming from a more traditional methodology of producing technical publications, non-S1000D if we like. And this is what I call the conflict zone. This is the dispute zone. This is the zone where our customers tend to, shall we say, this is where they find the most problems with an S1000D project. Okay, so this is coming from they don't understand their why. They don't understand, what it is they're actually asking for. So when their expectation is vastly different to what the actual is from the supply chain, that causes us a problem. Now, we're not going to get into this zone particularly. This is the fun zone of S1000D. And, we talk about this a lot on this channel, and we talk about, the inertia to get S1000D going and what kind of happens in this zone, in the fun zone. But the conflict zone is what I'm talking about here today, which is, the customer expectation is different to what the supply chain is actually trying to solve and what the supply chain is actually trying to do, as well as then the customer expectation is more of a traditional price and more of a traditional quotation for their technical publications, S1000D based technical publications. So this is the kind of the conflict zone, if you like. I won't talk about the green zone here on this particular one here, but this is kind of what I call the long grass zone, which often gets forgotten on an S1000D project. So the green area is, areas that we talk about maybe where we're having to upgrade our technical documentations, we're having to make technology changes, we might be doing midlife platform upgrades, updates to S1000D that we might want to use. There might be, as I've said already, changes to technology, etc. That's the long-term, and where often gets forgotten, because on a procurement project, often that will come from another budget in the future, for example. And so this also should be included in our strategy and our vision, which we should be, driving for our technical publications. Years ago, I did a video on YouTube, and I talked about technology pit stops and why we shouldn't be thinking today is, on a long life platform, this is how we're going to do tech pubs in 10, 15, 20 years. We have to have a vision for the future, a vision for what's happening, So this is kind of like the fun zone, the long grass zone, and the conflict zone of an S1000D quotation or a contract. And of course, then over the top of this, we can, and the reason I've not done it today is because I'm going to do a video for it in the coming weeks, is how do we see and communicate the return on investment. That's what the customer cares about. Doesn't care about all of the integration, interoperability kind of nonsense that's going over in the nonsense, a bit churlish, but the stuff that's going on in the supply chain. So the frustration comes from this slide that I put on YouTube, on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago. Now, this slide, when I put it on LinkedIn some time ago, actually perfectly exemplifies what I'm trying to say here. So, the customer, the product owner, the purchaser, whoever you want to, however you want to refer to them, again being quite generic, is they're being told to ask for S1000D, and in their mind they're just thinking technical publications, and those technical publications are, in their mind is a PDF or a printed manual or something along that. It could even be a rudimentary kind of IETP developed in some kind of third-party tool. But their expectation is vastly different to what they're being told by their consultant, by their advisor. And when it comes to costing and pricing, because of the S1000D fund zone, that price is often, invariably, much higher. Which means that we then enter that conflict zone. And that conflict zone on this slide is the boss is saying, we're only doing a frickin' PDF. How come this is so expensive? And that's because we don't understand all the stuff that's going on inside the S1000D fund zone. For me, there are three main areas of concern that we need to help our customers. And I'm doing a blog piece at the moment where we in the supply chain, we need to support our customers, understand what they're asking for and the problems that it's actually the S1000D and modern technical informations are addressing, and how we can actually maximize the return on early investment, which then hopefully removes a lot of the conflict in that conflict zone. However, the reality is, early doors, a lot of the budgets are being set for these technical publications, and they are not considering the S1000D type implementations. They're considering old legacy implementations, and that is where, when they're seeing these prices coming through for technical publications, people are having a little mental breakdown. So those are my thoughts. What are yours? Do let me know in the comments below. And, let me know, are you in the fun zone? Are you in the conflict zone? Or are you in the long grass zone? Or are you in all three zones? But those are kind of, and then stay tuned, because we're going to talk about how we can support our customers over, the life cycle of a product, to understand exactly what they're getting, so that they can be a little bit more informed about what they're actually asking for. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know what yours are, and I hope you found it useful. Hope you found it interesting. As always, look forward to receiving your comments and feedback.